Ma'am, we are on live now.
Yeah, thank you, Mobin sir. And I'll now request you to admit everyone who has joined us.
Sir, due to some technical glitch, we'll be able to hold the meeting. Maybe within the next 1 minute, we are going to start it again, sir. Pardon, sir.
Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. You are not audible.
Am I audible now, sir?
Yes, ma'am. You are audible now.
Okay, so just making it sure that I'm audible again, Mobin sir. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You are audible.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of our founder president, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, sir, I welcome you all to this event, which is much sought after by everybody. Welcome to Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee, Amity Law School, Noida, Amity University, Uttar Pradesh, in collaboration with National Institute of Social Defense, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, where we are going to organize a series of webinars on Transgender Persons Act 2019 and the accompanying rules of 2020. Up the panel today, we have with us our guest for the day, none other than Dr. R. Giriraj sir, who is Director, National Institute of Social Defense. We have with us Advocate Raman Sharma sir, who's Additional Advocate General, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh High Court. We have with us Mr. Raizada Saurabh Bali, who's partner and principal People Solutions Prosperity Consultant. And we have with us none other than Professor Dr. Adesh K. Gadpaile, sir, who's former Additional Director General of Health Services, Government of India, and presently in the School of Medicine and Research at Sharada University. And in the host panel today, we have with us our very respected and honorable chairman, Professor Dr. D.K. Bandyopadhyay, sir, together with Professor Dr. Aditya Tomar, sir, who is the Additional Director and Joint HOI. I'm also accompanied by my co-host and co-moderator for the day, Dr. Nitin Sharma, sir, and with hundreds of students joining us online on the panel of Zoom as well as YouTube. It's now the time that we begin this event by inaugurating this particular webinar series by invocation of the goddess. And I will now request all the guests to virtually join us in lighting the lamp. I'll request Vijay to share the lightening of the lamp video.
Om Bhur Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. He Sharide Ma, He Sharide Ma, Ajnanita se hame tar de Ma. He Sharide Ma, He Sharide Ma, Ajnanita se hame tar de Ma. Tu श्वेत वर्णी कमल पे विराजे, हाथों में वीणा मुकुट सर पे साजे. तू श्वेत वर्णी कमल पे विराजे, हाथों में वीणा मुकुट सर पे साजे. मन से हमारे मिटा दे अंधेरे, हमको उजालों का संसार दे माँ. हे शारदे माँ, हे शारदे माँ, अज्ञानता से हमें तार दे माँ. अज्ञानता से हमें तार दे माँ. अज्ञानता से हमें तार दे माँ.
That's lovely and beautiful. With that invocation, let's fill our lives with the beauty that is bounteous in this universe and let our physical and causal bodies be purified. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar series. And today we are also formally inaugurating our Transgender and Disability Rights Cell in the august presence of all the guests who shared this virtual dais. Well, there's a very famous quotation which is very aptly quoted. It very aptly supports the life that the trans people have been living. Mahatma Gandhi once said that first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then fight you and you win. This and much more has been the struggle of the transgender community in India. Well, in the year 2014, the Honorable Supreme Court of India, in the case of National Legal Services Authority versus Union of India, established the foundation for the rights of the transgender persons in India by recognizing transgender as the third gender and laying down several measures for prohibition of discrimination against transgender persons and protection of their rights. It's a very proud day for us when we are getting an opportunity to serve the transgender community. Having said so, I will now request the torch bearer of Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee, our very respected and honorable joint head of the institution and additional director, Professor Dr. Aditya Tomar, sir, to present his address. Over to you, respected sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sumitra. Firstly, I would like to welcome to all the dignitaries on the virtual dais, my students on the dais available on the virtual platforms. Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee, Amity Law School, Noida, Amity University, Uttar Pradesh, in collaboration with the National Institute of Social Defense and Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, organizing a series of webinars on the Transgender Persons Act 2019 and Rules 2022. In the inaugural ceremony of this webinar series, I would like to take the privilege to welcome all the esteemed guests available with us. Firstly, I would like to take the privilege to welcome Dr. R. Giriraj, Director, National Institute of Social Defense. Most welcome, sir, to accept our invitation and spare your valuable time to bless us. Secondly, I would extend my heartiest welcome to Advocate Raman Sharma ji, Additional Advocate General, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh High Court. Thank you very much, sir, to spare your time. Thank you. I would like to extend my welcome to Mr. Raizada Shaurabh Bali, Partner and Principal, People Solutions Prosperity Consulting. Thank you, sir, for sparing your time. And lastly, I would like to extend my heartiest welcome to Professor Dr. A.K. Gatpayale, sir, School of Medicine and Research, Sharda University, former Additional DG, Health Services, Government of India. Thank you, sir. Most welcome to Amity University. Whenever we are talking about the well-being, whenever we are talking about the social justice, this area of our society, when we are talking about the transgender, we are talking about the disability, it is the most vulnerable section of our society. So it's with the help of the Ministry, National Institute of Social Defense, Amity Law School, Noida, start a special cell in Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee who will address the issues related to disabilities, disabled persons, or the Divyangjan and the transgender persons. So with these words, I would request to all the dignitaries to bless us with your kind words. And lastly, I would like to thanks to all the dignitaries. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Aditya Tomar, sir. You always motivate us. And under your guidance, Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee is doing a great work pan-India. Thank you so much for your support all the time. Ladies and gentlemen, today is a proud day, as I said. Well, with this, I remember something that was related to the trans community, and that's much related with the idea of self-expression. Because I am what I am, you have to accept me as I am. Well, the denial of self-expression is inviting death. Irreplaceability of individuality and identity is grant of respect to the self. This realization is one's signature and self-determined design. One defines oneself. I define myself. That is the glorious form of individuality, and this we exalt today as we inaugurate the Transgender and the Disability Rights Cell at Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee. Having said so, we have one person amongst us who believed in us more than we believe in ourselves. None other than Dr. R. Giriraj, sir, Director, National Institute of Social Defense. Sir believed that. He believed that our spirits are undaunted and that we could serve the society. And without any further ado, I will request one person who gave us the first opportunity to organize one day workshop on transgender. And again, because of his blessings, his support, we've got another project to organize 10 webinars to serve the society. Please welcome Dr. R. Giriraj, sir, Director, National Institute of Social Defense, with a round of applause. Welcome, Giriraj, sir. Welcome to Amity University. Over to you, respected sir.
Should I?
Yes,
Namaskar. Respected Raman Sharma, Additional Advocate General, JNK and Ladakh High Court. Then Professor Dr. Dilip Kumar ji, Chairman, Amity Law School. Dr. Nidan Sharma ji, Assistant Professor, Convener, Webinar Series. Dear Professor Dr. Aditya Tomar ji, Additional Director, HOI, Amity Law School, Noida. Then Rajada Sorab Baliji, partner and principal, People Solutions and Prosperity Consulting. Professor A.K. Godbai Lake School of Medicine. Such Sarda University, former additional DG Health Services, Government of India. Shafali Resard, additional director and joint HOI ALSN, and other friends who have assembled here. I'm much, delighted in addressing this particular gathering. The Transgender Act 2019, which has been enacted in the year 2019, and subsequent year rules has been approved by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. But for protecting the rights of the transgender person, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, which started working since 2012, and first consultation committee we organized in the year 2013. Dear friends, all the state secretaries and eminent transgender persons, state secretaries, all took part in the conference, and we came to conclusion that there must be a expert committee. 4 different expert committee we formed, and each committees, they started discussing on different subjects, aspect of the transgender. They submitted the report, and finally we compiled and we uploaded in the ministry's website. And after that, the many more developments which took place. Now the National Institute of Social Defense, which is an advisory body to the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, has assigned the task of creating awareness among the different stakeholders on the issues and provisions of the Transgender Act 2019 and the rules 2020. In the line of the training and sensitization, the many number of stakeholders, the important functionaries have been trained by NIST. In the line of education institutions, Amity University has become frontline worker, and they supported NIST in various ways in implementation of the awareness programs on the provisions of the TG Act 2019. And I'm happy to know that they have set up the committee for dealing the grievances of the transgender students. That is also part of the TG Act and the TG rules according to the section 13 of the TG rule 2020. And Amity University has been performing a lot of welfare work within their campus, not only for the transgender persons and also many vulnerable people, but this transgender person is ultra vulnerable people. They need extra support than the vulnerables, because social stigma much attached with this community. That's why the National Institute of Social Defense, which has planned to sensitize 9 types of stakeholders, which includes police functionaries, media functionaries, educational department functionaries, school students, college and university, then employment organizations, Panchayat Raj organizations, and many more. But particularly in the education sector, many universities, and in Delhi, Amity University, which has become very popular, and even Delhi School of Social Work, and many more institutions located in the Delhi region, they are supporting us for implementation of the TG Act 2019. The main concern of the gender person is recognition There are so many sections are there in the TG Act. There are 9 chapters. Each and every chapters will cover important aspect of the transgender person. There's chapter 2, which covers prohibition of the discrimination against the transgender person. Especially in the education institutions, this discrimination need to be removed. For which purpose only rules as a provision of setting up a committee, redressal committee, which the Amity University has set up now. It's a wonderful move. Then subsequent provisions which confirms the right to be recognized. Every transgender person in this society has a right to be recognized. So through legally, the every transgender, they will get their rights. Then they will get a right to be employed in any government organizations, private organizations, in all the places. Then welfare measures also, as per the provisions of the Act, the government, appropriate government, is supposed to formulate and should be implemented. Under the provisions, we have started the Garimagrag, that is a shelter home for the transgender person. There are 12 Garimagrag organizations which we have set up. This is a just a shelter home for the transgender persons. Over the period of 1 year, they can stay there and they can develop the skill and they can get the employment or self-employment. With that, they can lead their meaningful and dignified life. Then health aspect also, which is properly addressed through the legislation, and for which the SMILE project has been formulated by the Government of India. All their health needs will be fulfilled through the SMILE scheme, especially people who are undergoing the SRS treatment. The full expenses would be met out of the SMILE scheme, and also the vision for the promotion and recreational facilities, sports activity under section the respective chapter, that is 6th chapter of the TG Act 2019, and also 7th chapter, which has a provision to establish the National Council for the Transgender Person. Already we have set up, and more than 10 transgender experts, eminent transgender experts, they have been part of the National Council for the Transgender. They have been working well, and they are overseeing the programs, implementation of the programs pertaining to the transgender. So that is also effectively going on. And education is one of the important, for every human being, and that only makes the vulnerable to be empowered. That's why we are taking so much efforts. We are being very serious in implementation of this transgender persons 2019 Act across the educational sector, in the line of the creation among the school, colleges, and universities. Today's webinar has become very important and very serious. And really, I would like to thank the management of the Amity University, and especially Department of Social Work, and they have been very supportive to the National of Social Defense. In future also, many more such programs we have plan of conducting in collaboration with the eminent the Department of Social Work, Amity University. With these few words, I would like to thank the organizer of this wonderful program for giving this wonderful opportunity to address in this the Elite group. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Giriraj sir. We are so humbled and honored with your presence, sir. I'll just take 3-4 minutes out of your busy schedule. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a very proud day for us, as Giriraj sir himself has said that this webinar series is quite serious and that everybody should contribute their bit to the society. So, without any further ado, I'll now request Honorable Chairman Professor Dr. D.K. Bandyopadhyay sir, Giriraj sir, and our additional directors and joint HOIs, Professor Dr. Aditya Tomar sir, Professor Dr. Arvind Bhanu sir, Professor Dr. Shefali Raizada ma'am, to formally inaugurate the Transgender and the Disability Rights Cell under the aegis of Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee at Amity Law School, Noida. Over to you, Chairman sir, for your beautiful words and for your words of motivation. Chairman, sir, Professor Dr. D.K. Bandyopadhyay. Thank you so much, everybody, for your august presence. And here we inaugurate the cell formally. Chairman, sir. Over to Chairman, Professor Dr. D.K. Bandyopadhyay, sir.
So at the outset, I must congratulate our Legal Aid and Literacy Committee of ALS Noida for taking the initiative and making series of lecture series for generating awareness among the students, which National Institute of Social Defense, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, the Government of India has encouraged us for doing that. Actually, they have given us the funding, so really we are thankful to the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, especially to Dr. R. Girirajji for considering us that yes, we will be able to deliver, such type of transgender related awareness program, especially the act that has been enacted in 2019, and also the rules that are also been formulated in 2020. So I am really thankful to Dr. Aditya Tomar, who took the initiative. I am also thankful to Dr. Sumitra, Dr. Nitin, who immensely took the initiative for making the seminar series to be successful, inviting the people from different walk of life who are actually involved in removing the ill feeling or menaces from the society about the transgender. Now, I am also thankful to Dr. Shefali Raijeda with the support, and Dr. A.P. Arvind Bhanu, all additional director, they supported this program to see its success. I think my kudos are for them. I am thankful for the speaker, those who accepted our invitation, and that is Saurabh Bali, Raijada, Saurabh Bali, then A.K. Gadpalia, then Professor Ghulam Jadani, Advocate Amandeep Singh, and Mr. Rajiv Kumar Bats. We are really thankful to you, sir, for accepting our invitation and to really give the awareness about the transgender rules and Transgender Act, so that they are properly understood and they are the future leader of this country or future generation of the country. So they will take it further, so that this type of menace which are being seen or which are being observed, that are gradually disappear. With this, I like to tell a few things about this transgender and its rules. Now, I was just going through the rules, the act itself, and the act is so beautiful. Now, I cannot but profusely congratulate Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment for bringing this act in 2019 and a subsequent implementation. And one thing is very clear, that our society is full of prejudices. Society is full of wrong customs and culture which has been inherited for a number of years, and naming that individual, particularly in women, transgender, and then causing harm to such an extent beyond imagination. Women are often singled out in the name of transgender by an individual or a group in the community, or the community as a whole, for the purpose of holding such women responsible for causing ailment and misfortune to the society. The victims of transgender generally
They are Dalit, Adivasis, indigenous tribal women, middle class women living in poverty. That's the most important thing, living in poverty. And this evil practice, therefore, affects those who are already most vulnerable section in the society and who already suffer from multiple forms of disadvantage. The stigma of being labeled as transgender and the resulting of being an additional burden that those already marginalized individuals have to bear. And such is the apathy that we are showing to them. Although Constitution has given us the protection, and transgender are equally protected, and the practice gender-based practice of gender-based discrimination and it affects the woman disproportionately. And this transgender is a gross violation of women of human rights, and it is under the Part 3 of the Constitution, right to equality, Article 14, then prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth under Article 15, the right to protection of life and personal liberty under Article 21, which includes the right to life with dignity and prohibition of torture, right of quality of opportunity in matters of public employment under Article 16, the abolition of untouchability under Article 17, and the protection of the interest of minorities under Article 29 of the Constitution. And then for transgender, also they violates they violates the human rights and the Declaration of Human Rights of Civil and Political Rights Convention eliminates all forms of discrimination against women, which is binding upon India. But unfortunately, and the way the society is governed, the way the society is customized, the way the society menaces are big there, these transgenders are actually gets different treatment from different walk of life. That income generation, the way they live in a sanitary condition, the way they are divided of different types of opportunities are galore. So in this context, this act which has come with the welfare measures, including education, social security, health, and are very, very appropriate. And I must, recognize, the beauty of our governance system. So the rule that has been notified, it provides the employment opportunity and including the reservations, employment opportunity, including the reservations of the transgender, and these reservations with belonging to the transgender, whether under the sports quota, whether it is in a disability condition, that is going to be equally applicable to that. Now, there are so many things which has come out of this act, and the rule that has been formed in terms of implementing this act is really, really praiseworthy. Now, I'm just, I don't want to stand between you and the floor, because there are lots of speakers that have been lined up, and we are going to listen from them, that their way of looking at this act and the way of looking at these rules of the act. And certainly I look forward to see, even though that's a beautiful act is there, such a beautiful rules have been formulated, then what is that still the sufferings of the transgender is not getting removed from the menaces of the society. And one thing that I can see that as an academician, that this menaces of the society can only be done with the proper awarenesses among the citizens of the country. Law is okay, punishment is okay, the deliberation is okay, but awareness among the common man, among the common citizen, future citizen, that transgender is also like us. Transgender is there, they are not a different type of persons. Maybe God has created in such a way that we have termed them as a transgender. Now, with these words, once again, I congratulate Amity School of Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee for taking up this initiative. And thank you, Sumitra, thank you, Nitin, and thank who others are also involved in actualizing this, the concept of conducting this seminar series or the webinar series. And once again, I thank you, Dr. Giriraj Ji, for extending or for recognizing Amity Law School Noida and Amity Institute of Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee, and trusting upon us that yes, we will be able to create awareness at least to thousands of students. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. D.K. Bandyopadhyay, sir, our very respected and honorable chairman. You always motivate us. Thank you, Giriraj, sir, for your august presence. And we feel really proud that I remember from moving on street to street on the streets of Delhi NCR, talking about the pride moments, giving them so much of love. Today, formally, we could institutionalize the transgender and the disability rights cell at Legal Aid and Literacy Committee at Amity Law School, Noida. Having said so, I remember Justice Deepak Mishra who said that why not look for rainbow in every crowd? Equality and liberty and this freedom can only be fulfilled when each one of us realize that even the trans community has the same rights as other citizens. So without any further ado, I'll now hand it over to my dear colleague and convener of the webinar series, Dr. Nitin Sharma, Assistant Professor, Amity Law School, Noida, for his address. Over to you, Dr. Nitin Sharma.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman, sir. And first of all, we have welcome to all the esteemed guests. So first of all, we want to we are very grateful to the NIST, Ministry of Women, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, for extending support to our series of webinars from time to time. In the past also, we were instrumental in organizing an offline sensitization program, and in pursuance of that particular program, it was desired by the ministry as well as it was as an outcome of the deliberation during the webinar that we have established a cell under the name Transgender and Disability Rights Cell. So as a part of this webinar series, first of all, I want to mention that the ongoing webinar series has tried to align varied perspectives on transgender issues and challenges. And accordingly, during the series of webinars, we have touched each and every area which is pertaining to the rights of the transgender people, be it like health rights, their rights to identity, their like inclusive right about inclusive education. Likewise, we have certain their right to privacy and certain welfare programs initiated by the ministry and other government agencies. So with this, I hope, wish and pray that this collaboration between Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee, Amity Law School Noida, and National Institute of Social Defense, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment will go a long way. And together in the service of the nation, we shall contribute our maximum and fulfill the dream of our Prime Minister, who believes in the mantra of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas, and Sabka Vikas. With this, I stand by heartful gratitude to all the esteemed guests and our joint HOIs, Professor Dr. Aditya Tomar sir, Professor Dr. Shifali Razada ma'am, and Professor Dr. Arvind P. Banu sir. And most importantly, all the fellow colleagues who are with us as a part of our online series, and all the fellow dear students. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nitin sir, for telling us about the genesis of this webinar series. And of course, as I said, that moving from street to street on in different parts of this proximity and vicinity, yes. And today, when we get institutionalized, we are filled with pride, honor, and dignity that we are able to serve the trans community. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we all know that there is a national portal for the transgender persons, and that it helps the transgenders in digitally applying for a certificate, and that the identity card can be issued to them from any part of the country, and that will prevent them from any kind of physical atrocities and interaction from any officials per se if they see. So they can apply for a digital certificate on the national portal, especially meant for the transgenders. Well, everybody, having said so, I will now request and invite none other than Advocate Raman Sharma, sir, who's Additional Advocate General, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh High Court. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time from your busy schedule. Over to you, respected sir.
A very good afternoon to all the distinguished guests, dignitaries, and all the participants. I'm grateful to the MIT University for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this web seminar. Insofar as the Act is concerned, this Act was passed by the Parliament in 2019. However, it came into being on 10th of January 2020 when it was published in the official Gazette. And thereafter, this Act has been in vogue. But this Act owes its origin to the judgment which was delivered by the Honorable Supreme Court. The judgment is known as Nalsa versus Union of India, a very cherished, celebrated judgment delivered way back in 2014. That judgment was passed pursuant to the petitions which had been filed by the members of the transgender community, seeking recognition of their gender, saying therein that they should have a choice to have a gender of their own reckoning, and also they wanted the protection of their rights and also stopping of the discrimination which was often meted out to them. As we all know that the transgender community has always been at the lower ebb of the society, a marginalized section of the society, often ostracized also. It is a very common knowledge that children who were born having a transgender feature would often be forsaken by the families, would be given up, and then they would be subjected to every kind of a harassment and discrimination. For all these reasons, the members of the community were before the Honorable Supreme Court saying therein that they should be given the freedom to choose the gender of their choice, and they should be protected against every sort of a discrimination that was coming in their way day in, day out. So the Honorable Supreme Court in that particular matter gave a ruling whereby Honorable Supreme Court said that if we look into the contents of Article 21, it makes a mention of the word person, which is gender neutral. And for the first time, the transgender community was recognized as the third gender. And it was held that a person's right to choose the gender of his own reckoning or choice should be a part of right to life and liberty as enshrined in Article 21. And not only that, the Honorable Supreme Court also said that there should not be any discrimination against the members of this community when it comes to the opportunities in employment, or availing of the public services, in healthcare services, and even issued the directions that there should be special facilities for their health and also for carrying out the surveillance with regards to issues like HIV, etc. So given this background, this backdrop, the matter was deliberated by the government, and ultimately Parliament in its wisdom passed this act, and ultimately it got promulgated on 10th of January 2020, whereafter it has attained the force of the law. It is in place now. Now, I would say that this law has taken care of many of the aspects which were considered by the Honorable Supreme Court. And now for the first time, we have a piece of legislation which criminalizes the fact that you cannot forsake a child after the birth in case child would present certain intersex features. If the child has any features which are not conforming to the normal features of the male or female identity or has these intersex variations, then that child cannot be forsaken, cannot be removed from the family, will have to stay with the family, will have a right to be part of the same household until unless there is a court order to the contrary. Not only that, this act also criminalizes the discrimination. Now it is a criminal offense. If we go through the act, it comprises of many sections, but more particularly, I can speak about section 18 of the act, which provides for as to what would be the offense and what would be the penalties in case any member of the transgender community were to be subjected to the discrimination which has been barred and prohibited under the act. So we need to understand that anyone who forces any member of the transgender community to a forced labor or obstructs that person in public or otherwise subjects to any kind of a harassment or denies him the place of residence, or if there is any mental or physical cruelty, all these would constitute an offense under the act, and that person shall be liable for prosecution, and the punishment would be minimum of 6 months, maximum up to 2 years, and with fine. So therefore, now this act, this legislation should act as a deterrent also. We will not be and should not be looking for a situation where we necessarily have to prosecute people, but this aspect of the matter needs to be highlighted. This must be in public domain. This has to be given a wider publicity so that people who are not either aware of the promulgation of the act or the features of the act, they are in the know. Because we need to first of all create this deterrence and at least an impression in the minds of the people so that they are not in a position to subject the members of the community to any kind of a harassment. And I would further say that this act now gives the liberty to a person to have the gender of the choice. Now, under this act, you can apply and get a certificate of your identity. Supposingly, you were assigned a particular gender at the time of your birth, maybe a male or female. Now you have a right to approach the government and get the certificate of the gender of your choice. So you are no longer entrapped in a body. Supposingly, now Supreme Court in the NALSA judgment said that only physical attributes will not be valid for determining your identity. Your identity can be determined based on a psychological test, which will determine whether you are a male or a female. So therefore, given that kind of the ruling by the Honorable Supreme Court and the law laid down, now a person would have the right to get a certificate of the choice. And this act further provides that in case you undergo any sex reassignment surgery, you can again go to the authority and have the sex incorporated in the certificate of your choice, whether you are a male or a female. I think it's an enactment which is exactly in the right direction. This offers all the protection against every sort of a discrimination. It prohibits any discrimination on in the matters of employment, education, public services, health, and everything. So it's a beautiful piece of legislation. I think we need to So I think this act will go a long way in mitigating the sufferings of the members of the transgender community and serve the nation very well and all the people. With all these words, I close my address, and I'm very thankful again to the Amity University for giving me this opportunity. I thank everyone and I congratulate Amity University not only for hosting this web seminar, for all the other good things that my worthy predecessors have already elaborated about, which have been set up by the Amity University. I wish you all the very best and all the good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for sparing your valuable time. And most importantly, you have highlighted the statutory and constitutional jurisprudence related to the transgender rights in India. And even though you have even mentioned the laid emphasis on the awareness aspect, no doubt awareness is must, and the role played by the judiciary is highly instrumental in this, in evolving the jurisprudence related to Transgender Act. And most importantly, as you said, there is a path-breaking judgment in the form of the NALSA judgment, and this act has taken some sort of references from that particular judgment, and hopefully with your support and with the blessings of the organizer, with the blessings of the ministry, and the blessings of the chairman sir and our joint HOI, we'll be able to disseminate this information to every nook and corner of the country. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So now, as a part of the our inaugural session, now I would like to invite Mr. Raizada Sorobali sir. He's the partner and principal People Solutions Prosperity Consulting. Mr. Raizada Sorobali sir.
Thank you, Nitin, for the invitation, and I'm equally thankful to all the guest speakers and the faculty and the management of Amity University. So, though I have given a lot of sessions and seminars in Amity University, so I mean, all the fraternity is basically from the law background. So I'm not from the law background. I'm a HR professional, and then again, I'm an educationalist. So I would like to highlight few points, few areas where these trans people have been deprived of, and then again, I would like to highlight few organizations, few NGOs that have taken some steps to give them reforms in the area of social and economic side of the society. So I, always criticize few of the religious books where they always talk about two genders. So most of the religious book, they have not, even highlighted and described the third gender, that is trans people. So similarly, I mean, they have been deprived of from social and economic activities from very long time, and we, those who so-called the third race, I mean the superior race, male and female. So we are responsible for their, for not giving them the equal rights in the society. So no doubt that these people are deprived of from social equalities, social rights, education, job, and it became our moral responsibilities, especially the government and the private organization, to take some steps and given them social justice. And then again, if we start giving them, if we empower them in the economic activity, then I'm sure that a day will come when you will see them more empowerment. So the data says that only around 96% of the trans people, they are forced to do some undignified jobs like begging, sex workers, and 92% of the transgenders, they are they are deprived of from social and economic activities. 70 to 80% of the trans people, they never get a chance to attend any school or college, and fortunately or unfortunately, only 6% of the trans people have been employed in they got employment, some dignified employment, and that's true into some private organization and NGO. Most of them have been employed in NGOs, and there are certain good multinational organizations who have taken some steps to give them jobs in different domains depending upon their education, skill sets, and competencies. And in fact, there are certain multinational organizations, and they have taken certain training programs for these transgenders. They have trained them on various skill sets, be it some technical skill sets, some soft skills, and there are certain domains where they have trained them, and finally they absorbed them in their organization. And but then again, if I talk about their income, only 1% of the trans people, they are getting a salary range of around 25,000 per month. So I'm talking about the transgenders that are into dignified jobs. Even if I talk about some government organizations that have taken some steps to give them employment, I believe the Kochi Rail Metro Station, they were the first. I mean, they advertised few jobs for trans people in year 2018, and they have employed around 56 trans people in their organization. But you will be surprised to know the fact that around 80% of the trans people, they left their job within a span of 1 month. And there are a lot of reason, they've faced certain discrimination in the organization, and there are around 18 to 20 trans people. They have they left the job just because they didn't get any kind of accommodation. So all the landlords they denied them any their hometowns, that they have to go back to their original place. So unfortunately, around 80% of the trans people left the job, and even in 2019, the one transgender from Gorakhpur got the job in Indian Railway as a what we call it as a driver of the train. So even there are certain organization like Noida Metro Corporation, they have dedicated one metro station to all the transgender, and they employed a few transgenders in their organization. And I really appreciate the Karnataka government, who have initiated this step to give 1% reservation to transgenders in their systems. So be it education, be it jobs, so they are getting reservation in the government sector. Though I mean the government has taken the government has taken a lot of steps they have modified certain laws so that they can get social and economic justice in the society. A lot of government organizations have taken steps to give them the employment. I have seen a lot of NGO who came up with certain schools that are totally dedicated to these trans peoples. But then again, if you see the society and overall society of the India, so we are not accepting them as a third gender. So we are not giving them equality in the society. Even if the government is giving reservation to them, even the private organization or the NGO are giving them the jobs, but if they are not able to get the right skill set, right competency, right education, how they will get the jobs in the different organizations? Even if they acquire these, skill set, or even if they get educated, maybe graduation, post graduation, but then again, if they are not able to sustain in the organization, then who will be responsible for their livelihood? Then, so it became the moral responsibility of the society to give them equal rights, especially when it comes to in the we are able to give them the acceptance in the society. First of all, the society has to give them the acceptance, and then these reservations, these education policies will help them to get the right education, get the right skill set and competencies, so that they can get good employment in the industry or in the government sector. So I got a chance to interact with a lot of trans people who are employed, who are graduated, who are working with a good multinational organization. But then again, they are facing a lot of challenge. They are facing a lot of challenge in the organizations. Every trans person is planning to quit the job. The reason being they are not able to adjust among the so-called the superior race. So apart from giving them the reservation, we have to take some steps to give them the social justice in the society. So we have to raise their living standard. We have to give them the acceptance in the society, so that they can enjoy the third race of the world. So thanks for inviting me. So I just wanted to highlight a few points, especially when it comes to their education and when it comes to their employability. And I'm sure the way we are giving them the acceptance, they will definitely come when you will see them in every department of the government. When you will see that the person, the trans people, they are in all the good colleges and universities of the India, and they will definitely get a good recognition in the society.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Saurabh. And as an HR professional, you definitely get to meet so many people, and we are glad that you're working for the cause of their issues and challenges. And by institutionalizing the Transgender and Disability Rights Cell, we join hands today, and I'm sure that together we can fulfill the dream of our Honorable Prime Minister, who believes that every person, every Indian will be an asset to the entire world. Jo chahiye wo hai janwar. Thank you so much. Having said so, ladies and gentlemen, it's time that I now request and invite none other than Professor Dr. Adesh K. Gadpaile, sir, who is former Additional Director General, Health Services and Government of India, and presently rendering his services in the School of Medicine and Research at Sharda University. So you've also come in touch with so many people of different communities. So we would like to know more from you. What has been your experience meeting with the people of the transgender community? And so we would like to know more about your perspectives on this topic. Over to you, respected sir.
Thank you, Sumitra. And thank you to Amity Legal Cell Aid and Literacy Committee for giving me this opportunity to present my views on this webinar. I must thanks and I welcome all the dignitaries present at the web dais. You know that the Supreme Court has already given the verdict at so many places. The act is also formulated by Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. The rule has been started, but as you go in the society, there is a lot of problem. because the discrimination is the first. Society, the community is not accepting third gender as a part of life. They do not accept at all. They have a discrimination and hatred feeling about these guys. It is not bad. Why they are doing it is too bad for them, and too bad to a person who is suffering from the transgender, who has been recognized as a transgender, who has been identified as a transgender. It's not their fault. It's their wish. Government has given them liberty to choose their identity, and they have made a portal also. So they have equal rights in India, but society is still not accepting. That's why whenever they come to the hospital, when you go to the places or taking a healthcare, I will especially talk about the healthcare problem. So they do not disclose their problem first. And once they have been surrounded by the other people, they feel very shy. Somebody laughs on them, they feel anger, they feel dejected, and they could not express their problem first. So in this way, there is a, I can say there is a depression, first off, later on anxiety, and later on they are taking the misuse of substances, drugs, heroines, alcohols, and later on the anti-social propagandas they are doing, and later on they go for the violence. So in this way, they are being unnecessarily harassed by a community who is supposed to give the support to them. If you go, the incidence of the male to female ratio is 1 in 14,000. The male to female ratio is, female to male ratio is 1 lakh, and lot of diseases they are suffering. If you say that the HIV prevalence is 20% among the world, they are suffering out of the transgenders. The depression around 44.1%, anxiety 32.2%, the somatization 27.5%, smoking, as I have told, alcohols, the 26 times they are suffering from the general populations, alcohol intakes, and attempted suicide later on. They feel that they have been dejected, why they will sue. The financial barrier is also with them because there is lack of insurance, nobody supports them, nobody gives them money, and there are very, very little source to gain the money. That's why the health problem is always with them. They don't take care of their health properly. The problem may be in this, that we have not yet such a system developed to treat them separately. As you see that HIV people who have a separate clinic, the government has made drug free. The government has given social counseling also. Like this, there is no separate awareness program in the transgender as yet. So unless and until there is a response of the government side, response of the community side, and people himself, those who is suffering from the, he should live with identity. He should not feel shy of it, because it is his own will to see for it, not the peoples who are being supported by him. So in this way, there are a lot of problems, especially in transportation also. When you are going by the bus, when you are going by the auto rickshaw or some cab, they are being dejected. They can book the cab, back cab will come, and if you say that this is transgender, they immediately cancel it. This is a problem they are suffering. Actually, they do not reach to the hospital in a proper time. So they are dying on the road also. They are not being taken care properly. The society, as our honorable person has told, that there is a council. Yes, council is there. But when the council will help them, once the person will reach to them, then and then the council will help to them. They are not able to reach. They are not able to tell their problem to the society. Even number of surveys says that they are not able to define their problem properly. So in this way, I mostly feel that Ministry of Health should take the cognizance of this. As per the law given 2020, they should make a separate cell for this. They should make a separate awareness cell for this.
They should, because number of doctors are not aware about the hormone therapies. If they go to the private practitioners or if they go to the small area, they are not aware about the hormone therapies. So there should be separate cells, separate health centers. Within the health centers available, there should be separate clinic for them. Then and then they will come. We should not, there should need of awareness, as Dr. Bandyopadhyay told us. Awareness of the society is very much important. Unless society starts accepting them, this problem will continue. This I feel in person that even after there is law, the law abiding and law responding person should act on this. This is the my message for the day, that we should accept transgender as our part. Thank you very much. Giving this opportunity. Thank you very much. Sumitra.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Adesh, sir. Your presence has really humbled us and honored us. Thank you so much. Well, everybody, there's a very beautiful quote which talks about the third gender. It says that while people talk about having mercy, they just talk about love and justice. So by institutionalizing the transgender and disability rights cell today, we feel that even we are more empowered, and from this portal of Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee, what we can give you right now is lots and lots of love, more power, more joy, and much love to you, transgender community. Having said so, ladies and gentlemen, it's time that we wind up the inaugural session and we begin with the first webinar session. Having said so, Aditya Tomar sir, would you like to say something? Now we begin with the first webinar session.
I just want to thank to all the dignitaries to spare their valuable times and enlighten the faculty members and the students about this important area of our society, which is most vulnerable and needs a special care from our side. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. That further motivates the transgender and the disability rights cell. So we would now be beginning with the first webinar of this series of webinar. And today, right now, the first webinar has the title, Stating Non-Discrimination Provisions Within the Transgender Persons Act 2019 and Regulations 2020. So up the panel, we have with us three speakers, and most likely we will also be joined for a motivational address by somebody who's very close to Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee. So up the panel now, we would be having three speakers, none other than Professor Dr. Ghulam Yazdani from Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. We will have an address by Advocate Amandeep Singh, founding partner, Dexter Juris LLP, New Delhi. And then we will have an address by Dr. Harshita Singh Ma'am, who's assistant professor at Amity Law School, Noida. And for the motivational address, we have invited none other than Honorable and learned judge and secretary, District Legal Services Authority, Gautam Buddhanagar, Mr. Rajiv Kumar Vatsa. So, well, everybody, as we await the elite and illustrious panel to address us, there's a little that all of us should know. So, according to the World Health Organization, we should know what is the meaning of the word transgender. So, this is an umbrella term for the people whose gender identity and expression does not conform to the norms, expectations, traditionally associated with the sex which is assigned to them at their birth. So they are referred to as transsexuals if they desire medical assistance in order to make the transition from one biological sex to another. So there has been many recommendations for the reservations of the transgenders in jobs and educational institutions, and the right to declare the self-perceived gender identity without undergoing any kind of a sex reassignment surgery. And with that, we came up with the Transgender Persons Act of the year 2019. And then we have the accompanying rules of the year 2020. So while the Transgender Persons Act 2019 states that a transgender person shall have the right to self-perceived gender identity, the Act has a provision that provides transgender the right of residence with the parents and immediate family members, and much more will be talked about by the elite panel. So talking about identity and talking about self-expression, today by institutionalizing our transgender cell, we wish from this portal much love, much power, and much joy to the transgender community. Having said so, I will now request and invite Professor Dr. Ghulam Yazdani from Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi to present his address. Over to you, respected sir. We just got an intimation that there is a technical problem with Yazdani sir. So in the meanwhile, I would like to thank Ms. Shweta Sehgal, consultant at National Institute of Social Defense, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Ms. Shweta Sehgal has been with us right from the time when we got our first assignment from the Ministry of Social Justice. It was because of her motivation that we could finally institutionalize the Transgender and the Disability Rights Cell at Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee under the able guidance of Professor Dr. Aditya Tomar sir. Thank you, Aditya sir, and thank you, Shweta Sehgal ma'am. So in line, following the webinar series, because Ghulam Yazdani sir is having a problem at his end, I will now invite our first speaker for the webinar series, none other than Advocate Amandeep Singh, who's founding partner, Dexter Juris LLP, New Delhi, to present his address. And I would also request all the students who've joined to make good notes. Over to you, Advocate Amandeep Singh.
A very good afternoon to all of you. And at the very beginning, I appreciate the effort being made by Amity University to further this, what I say, a social cause towards the upliftment of a very discriminated class of people or a part of our society. I thank Amity University for this invitation and for making me part of this program. So to begin with, I say that this protection of transgenders Persons Act 2019, I say is a social reformative legislation, which has followed a very eminent judgment by the Honorable Supreme Court of India, which is the Nalsa versus Union of India case. I say it is unfortunate that in an independent India, it has taken us so many years to actually recognize a class of people, rather I say legally recognize a class of people whom we have seen being discriminated, being marginalized, just for a specific reason or characteristics. I'll just go back to pre-independent Indian history. If we read our ancient texts, if we read Mughal history, and even if we read the colonial era history, we find that there was a recognition which was given to the transgender community. Though I do not say that they were equals, but they were recognized. So socially, they were recognized as a class historically. But the first legal recognition which they got was in the pre-independent Indian history, was with the Criminal Tribes Act 1871, where for the first time the government of India defined the word eunuchs. And unfortunately, the intent of this act was not to uplift these people, but to further marginalize them and to further discriminate with them. So unfortunately, a social practice which was already going on in India was somewhere brought into the legal domain and was further promoted by the government of India in the pre-independent history. If we go by the General Clauses Act, which was brought to India by the Britishers the only two genders which were recognized were male and female. So I again say that historically, we have been socially recognizing them as a third gender. Legally, we did not cover the transgenders into any community, class, or genders. Now, post-independence, with the change of scenarios, we understood that education became a very important part of our society. With the growth, with the economic growth which came in this country, people had to update them to be part of that growth story. But the social practice of discrimination against a person having certain characteristics with which he has been born, that continued. And unfortunately, we as a society never looked forward to find a solution to it. Probably one of the reasons is that the number of people who belong to this community or known people belonging to this community was a very small percentage of the total population. So probably nobody thought that they also have certain requirements. They also are to be treated with dignity. Because the number is very small, so nobody was raising voice for them. Rather, I say, over a period of time, we have socially accepted that a certain class of people is to be treated in a certain manner, without realizing that they are also human beings. They are citizens of India. They also should have the same right to live and the right to live with dignity. Fortunately, it was with the Nalsa versus Union of India case where the Honorable Supreme Court, after a detailed deliberation, recognized transgenders as a third gender. And it called upon the government to understand that it is its responsibility to further the cause of the Constitution of India, that to protect and provide constitutional guarantees to every citizen of India, irrespective of his bodily characteristics or to the gender he belongs to. I rather say that this act, in its true sense, accentuates the principle of life, right to life and right to live with dignity, which is guaranteed by the Constitution of India, by ensuring that a very discriminated and marginalized class of our society is ultimately can experience what in true sense the constitutional guarantees mean for each citizen of this country. Being very precise to the topic of today's webinar, that are the non-discriminative provisions under the 2019 Act and the 2020 rules. I'll first refer to Section 3 of this Act. And I say that Section 3 of this Act is basically the soul of the Act. It provides for the very purpose of this Act. In a very broad sense, Section 3 provides that there shall not be a discrimination against the transgender person. But before I go with that, this is the first act which provides for a legal definition of the third gender. So when it says that there shall not be a discrimination against a class of person, that class is defined, that when do you fall in that class. Now, from whom this act protects a transgender from discrimination. So there are various aspects of life which I say during which a transgender person faces discrimination, and this act covers the various aspects of a life of a person to ensure that there is no discrimination against such a person on the basis of its gender. Before we go into section 3 in detail and the subsequent sections, I must say that in principle, this act endeavors to protect a transgender person from discrimination right from the family wherein he or she is born. Thereafter, in the educational institutions where such a person may go for its education, and very importantly, in the establishments where such a person is employed. So these are 3 different aspects which are being covered right from the childhood when such a person is born in a family, because what is being understood in Indian society, if a transgender person is born in a family, the first discrimination which is being faced is within the family. The person is not socially acceptable. As a consequence of that, the person is treated not as a child of the family, but in most of the circumstances, the person is treated as an unwanted person in the society, in the family, and the family wants to get rid of the person. So this act looks forward as a first step to ensure that the child is not discriminated by the family. Then it goes up to the educational institutions, and then it goes up to for the employers. Along with that, the other aspects of life, like your health, such aspects are also covered. So first of all, we refer to section 3 of this act, which provides for a very broad perspective. So I say chapter 2, which only covers section 3, I again say is the soul of this act, which is, and further, chapter 5 and chapter 6 of the act provides for the provisions which detail the purpose of the act as defined in section 3. When we go by the provisions of section 3, it provides that no such person should be discriminated or given unfair treatment, or his education shall be discontinued in an educational establishment and any related services only for the grounds that he is a transgender person. So when we understand the drafting of this act, it provides for 3 words, which says the denial, discontinuation, or unfair treatment. Understanding it factually, we must remain conscious about this fact that a person who's from transgender community may not realize the fact at the very beginning of his education or the beginning of his schooling. There may be circumstances where during the continuation of his studies, this fact either the transgender person realizes or the people around him realizes that he is a transgender. So even a person who is continuing education in a school may face circumstances where he is forced to discontinue his schooling. So that is why I say that while drafting this act, the legislature has been very conscious of this fact that it does not even only covers the issue of denial, that you are denied education or you are provided unfair treatment. It also covered the issue of discontinuation, where a person has been continuing education and in the meanwhile, the society gets to know that he's a transgender, he is forced to discontinue his schooling. So this is an important aspect which is covered under Section 3 in a broad sense. Similarly, Section 3 also talks about unfair treatment in relation to the employment and occupation. Now it covers both the aspects. One is the employment. When a person is employed in an establishment. The second is the issue of when he is in occupation. He may not be employed somewhere, he may be a professional, he may be doing his own business. Now, for example, when somebody looks forward to start his own business or wants to enter into a profession, there are certain licenses which are required. There are certain registrations, or probably there are certain permissions which he requires from the government. As an individual, there are many places, many such systems which require that person to declare the gender. So merely because a person declares a third gender, he cannot be given an unfair treatment in the process of licensing or in the process wherever the regulatory system requires the person to declare the gender. Similarly, as far as the unfair treatment is concerned, similarly, Section 3 also provides that a person cannot be denied employment or occupation just for the reason that he is on the basis of his gender. The other aspect which is covered by Section 3 broadly is the importance of healthcare services. So what in the opening address, Professor Adesh very categorically pointed out that there's a tendency of depression, there's a tendency of suicidal instincts amongst the transgender community, and there has been a reason for that because nobody wants to associate for them, as we have stigmatized the gender over decades, rather I say over centuries in our social structure. That leads to a situation where they are unable to find emotional, financial support from the community. That is one of the reasons why we find that generally transgender people have a practice of living in a community of their own. Because otherwise, in a social setup, it is difficult for them to find out economic support, to find out social support, and most importantly, psychological support. Especially in the light of the fact that the same person is being mistreated, ill-treated. In the due course of his life, in every aspect of his life, he is unwanted, he is discriminated, he is stigmatized. The same factor leads to a situation where there are no healthcare services. Because if we understand, if somebody visits a hospital, while filling up the form, admission form, what importantly is required is you declare your gender, male, female, and that is one of the perspective on the basis of which the diagnosis are being conducted by a hospital and the prognosis, the treatment is given. Now in these circumstances, we find that a person who's going to hospital under the third, as declaring himself to be a third gender, it is important for the doctor to very fairly understand the condition of the person. And he should be ready to serve him, and the hospital and the staff should be ready to serve him without having any biases toward his gender. So this is a very important aspect which is broadly covered as the healthcare services. Another very important aspect which Section 3 covers is the prohibition from enjoyment or from any such act which causes an interruption in the enjoyment or use of any goods, accommodation, services, facility, benefit, privilege, or I say opportunity, which is available to the general public. So in the circumstances, we find that historically, when you marginalize a community or a class of people, the oppressive class tries to regulate them by social norms and restrict their access to the public facilities. So for example, I say public parks or a public accommodation. In these circumstances, I say, for example, a transgender person is traveling and he has to access the facility of a hotel for staying overnight. Now, again, as we see that when you go to a hotel and you've been asked to fill a registration form, you have to declare your gender. Very practically, and unfortunately in our society, if a transgender person travels and requires a hotel facility, probably there will be many who may refuse it only on the basis of the gender. And unfortunately, it is not, it does not provide any logic to that. Unfortunately, it has been a social norm, I say a social issue, because of which we have been behaving like this. Other than that, what importantly is covered by Section 3 is the right of movement. That you cannot stop a person from going from one place to the other or to accessing any public route only on the basis of the gender. Therefore, a fair treatment is required to be provided to a transgender person, and he has the right to movement, which again I say is a fundamental right to access any place where he wishes to visit. Another very important aspect which has been covered under Section 3 broadly is the right to reside, the right to purchase, and right to rent or otherwise occupy a property. What we understand historically, transgenders have not been, the families disowned transgender people. And a consequence of that is that you do not have a roof on your head. You are left out at the mercy of the world to find out a place to reside. And in certain areas of our society, if for example in a village, the society comes to know that a transgender is a part of the family, they would ensure that either the transgender person leaves the house, the family is forced to send him out of the house, or otherwise the complete family has to leave the village. There have been certain instances. So very importantly, I say, a huge discrimination which is being faced by the transgender community is, unfortunately, the place to live. They do not have a place to live. So to ensure this and addressing this very specific issue, Section 3 of the Act prohibits any such act which denies or which discontinues or which provides for any unfair treatment with regard to the right to reside and consequently the right to purchase, the right to rent or otherwise occupy any property. So we understand under the right to livelihood, it is important that you have a right to stay, your right to a roof on your head. Further to that, another very important aspect to bring the community in the mainstream is that to allow them to hold public offices or private offices. So with that aspect, covering that aspect, Section 3 also provides that there shall be no discrimination against a transgender person for giving him an opportunity to stand for or hold a public or private office. Another aspect, very important aspect, which is broadly covered by this provision is the members in whose custody a transgender person may be. As I already stated, that in many of the cases, we would find that if the family is not ready to part with the transgender person, transgender member of their family, the complete family is outcasted. They do not have access to the public infrastructure. They are denied access to the government infrastructure or the private establishments or private infrastructure nearby, only for the reason because a transgender person is in the custody of the family, who treats the person as their own child, irrespective of his physical characteristics. So this aspect itself has been covered under Section 3, that even no such discrimination can be done. Such discriminations are prohibited even against the persons who are in custody of such transgender people. So very precisely explaining the Section 3, I again say that this is the soul of this act. With that, I look forward to explain Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 of the Act. Now, these provisions specifically deal, so when I say Section 3 has broadly covered each aspect of discrimination which a transgender person may face, Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 are very specific. So, I would like to start from Section 12, which falls under Chapter 5, which says the obligation on establishment and other persons. Now see, who is the one who can discriminate against a transgender? So the first is an individual. As a member of the society, it would be an individual who can discriminate against a transgender person. At the other hand, it can be an organization, which is defined here as establishment. So the word establishment is defined under Section 2B of the Act to cover both government organizations as well as a private organization, which would include a body corporate, that would mean a company or an incorporated body of an incorporated association, incorporated partnership, individuals, firms, societies, associations, in all such manner as people can associate and formulate an institute or an establishment. These are covered under the definition of establishment. So coming back to Chapter 5, which starts from Section 9, but I first want to start from Section 12 for the reason because Section 12 covers the immediate aspect of the family, that is right of residence. So Section 12 provides that there cannot be a discrimination against a transgender, even by his own family. In the words which have been used in this section, it says no child shall be separated from parents or immediate family on the ground of being a transgender, except on an order of a competent court in the interest of such child. So the historic practice which we have in our country, that when you get to know that a transgender person is part of a family, it is understood that the parents are not probably interested in keeping the child for whatever reason. It may be a social pressure, it may be with their own will or without their will. It is a practice, rather it has been practiced few years down the line, and even in certain part of India, it's still a practice, that people from transgender community come and they take the child with them. And then the child becomes part of that community or group of transgenders. Now, this issue has two aspects. The first aspect is, if the child is being removed from the custody of the family without their consent. And the second issue remains that the child, the family family with its own consent wants a child to be removed. In other words, I say the child is being discriminated by his own family. So these are the two aspects which are being covered by section 12. So it says that no child shall be separated from parents or immediate family. So it covers both the aspects. That in the circumstances where the family wants to keep the child, nobody else can enter and remove the child under any social pressure or for any other reason. The second aspect, where the child should feel to be part of the family, and the family should not discriminate against the child, is covered under section 12, clause 2, subclause 3. It says, every transgender person shall have a right to enjoy and use the facility of such household in a non-discriminating manner. So it's a very important legislation which consciously brings out the fact, which consciously understands the fact that a transgender person, even living with his own family, may be discriminated. So it put forward a provision where after his birth in the family, he has a right to enjoy and use the facilities of such household in a non-discriminatory manner. So just because he has certain characteristics, certain bodily characteristics, the family cannot discriminate him or restrict him from using the facilities which are available to all the family members. Lastly, this section 12 provides that in the unfortunate circumstances where the family of the transgender person or transgender child is unable to take care of the child for any reasons, the competent court can order the placement of the child under the care of a rehabilitation center. So section 12 covers a very important aspect of the life of a child, of a transgender person after his birth in a family. Now, going by the same sequence, before I come to section 9, 10, and 11, I go to section 13, that is under chapter 6. That covers the next aspect, which is the education. So it provides for the chapter itself says the education, social security, and health of transgender persons. So it put forward an obligation. Now, after putting forward an obligation on the family, providing a right to live in a non-discriminatory manner in a family, now section 13 puts an obligation on the education institutions. For what? to provide an inclusive education to transgender persons. So it says that every educational institution funded or recognized by the appropriate government shall provide inclusive education and opportunities for sports, recreation, and leisure activities to transgender persons without discrimination. Now, it does not only restrict education as to the schooling, what I say, literacy. It also asks for providing a proper opportunity in the other fields while the schooling is being done, that is to bring the transgender person to make him as an inclusive part of the education system by ensuring that they're also being given opportunity to participate in sports. They're also given opportunity to participate in recreation. It is not only that you are making him literate, but it is also important that you develop that person. You give the person the opportunity to develop socially, to have his or her personality developed in a certain manner. And that can only be done when you involve that person inclusively in all activities in the school. Section 14 again provides that the government should formulate such welfare schemes. So though it does not talk about a non-discrimination, but I again say it covers up, it provides, it furthers the purpose of section 3, that to ensure that they have an employment, they should be part of some system wherein they can achieve their financial independence. Now I come to the important aspect of section 9. We go back to chapter 5. So once a child who has got a social security of his family, a psychological support of his family, is allowed to stay with the family as provided under section 12, and then the aspect of education is covered under section 13, the aspect of employment comes in, that is section 9. So in the scheme of the act, a person is not to be discriminated in his employment, in any matter relating to his employment, or in the matter of recruitment, promotion, and other related issues, only on the basis of his or her gender. So this is a very important aspect where section 9 ensures that there's a financial independence which is brought to this person. Section 10 is complementary to section 9, which says that every establishment, whether it is a government, as I said, establishment is defined and it has a very wide definition to cover within it every government organization or a private organization. So section 10 obligates the establishment to ensure that there are compliances to this provision. And most importantly, section 11 thereafter, while during the employment there is an aspect that the person may face discrimination. So there is a grievance redressal mechanism which is required to be established by organizations and these establishments wherein such people are employed. So section 9, 10, and 11 covers a very specific aspect of the life of a transgender person, or I say life of every human being, that is the right to earn, to right to livelihood. So to accentuate that right, the section 9, 10, and 11 provides for the provision that a transgender person cannot be discriminated in this aspect of his life. Now coming to section 15, which I again say brings a very important change in the Indian medical structure. So where the section 15 provides for the healthcare facilities, and it calls upon the government to establish certain centers or certain facilities for the medical care and diagnosis of transgender people. So over a period of time, unfortunately, what has been seen in the society, because when you marginalize the society, especially in the circumstance that that marginalized society is deprived of earning a livelihood by any dignified way of living. You have forced a society towards, you have forced a class of people to have a limited means of earning, that may be begging or engaging into sexual activities to earn some money, because otherwise for survival you have to eat food. You have no way to earn money. So you have left out very limited opportunities for these people to earn their livelihood. And unfortunately, one of those have been the unregulated sex trade, due to which it has been found that there have been serious consequences on the health of transgender community. And one of the issues is AIDS. There have been people from the transgender community there who have been highly affected by such issues. So this act provides for the government to come up with certain medical facilities, and it also provides for a procedure where, as per the act, when a person has to choose the gender or requires a reassignment surgery, there are specific provisions for that. Such things are legalized. It is not, there's a provision in law now that a person can go for a sex reassignment surgery. Lastly, what I want to, when I come to the non-discriminative provisions, the most important one when I say is section 15 clause G, which provides for comprehensive insurance schemes for the third gender. Now, in any developed society or in a developing nation, we find insurance plays a very important part of social growth. It provides a social financial security to every individual. Now, by depriving a class of people from this service, this option of obtaining insurance, and importantly health insurance, we are depriving them of an opportunity to live the life in a peaceful manner. So this is a big change which has come forward, that a comprehensive insurance scheme is required, and in furtherance to this provision, even IRDA, the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India, has come up with notifications calling upon the insurance companies to come up with insurance schemes which cover the sex reassignment surgeries, which cover hormonal therapies, which cover laser therapies, and which also covers other health issues of transgender people. Most importantly, now they have access. They cannot be discriminated or they cannot be denied insurance on this ground that they belong to a third gender. So having covered up these non-discriminative provisions, the only another important non-discriminative provision which comes is under Rule of 2020. I very specifically, precisely point out to Rule 7. Now, Rule 7 put forward an obligation upon the governments to come out with the welfare schemes. So where I say it is a positive legislation, it asks the governments to act in a certain manner, not only to prohibit the discriminatory actions against a class of people, but also to make efforts for the upliftment of a class which has been discriminated, which has been stigmatized over a period of time. Most importantly, to provide an opportunity, Rule 7 calls upon governments to classify transgender people as under the category of other backward classes, so as to provide them an access to reservation through which they can avail seats in the schools. They have employment opportunities. They have better opportunities with the education system. Along with that, it calls upon the government to come up with welfare schemes and to ensure that these welfare schemes are formulated at each level, at the educational level, at the health, for the purpose of their health schemes, for other welfare schemes, including the social security and the financial securities. Lastly, to conclude, I say a very important aspect of this section of this provision is what if somebody contravenes these provisions. Now I say this act has been formulated, has been drafted in a very, I say, in a very deliberated manner. There have been processes. So if we refer to section 18, where we say the offenses and penalties, it precisely covers every aspect. So where we say that discrimination cannot be in the financial sector, discrimination cannot be in the education sector, discrimination cannot be for the purpose of health schemes. The offenses and penalties which have been brought out, as have been already pointed out by Advocate Raman Sharma, this act criminalizes any action which leads to discrimination, but in a terminology which in effect that discrimination when it leads to a result. So the offense and penalties are the consequence of a result of a discrimination. So I explain it further. So when we say that what are the offenses and penalties, if somebody discriminates, so I'll first of all come to section 18 clause B, which provides for a very wide definition of the consequences which can happen due to discrimination, due to a discriminative behavior. So it says whoever harms or injures or endangers the life, safety, health or well-being. Now what is important is, it is whether mental or physical. Now even if an act causes a mental injury to a transgender person, that is punishable. I further say, I quote, or tends to do an act including causing physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal and emotional abuse, and economic abuse. So we have categorized, this act has categorized the abuses. Generally, we find in a criminal act, there is a question, what is being criminalized is a physical abuse, a sexual abuse, or to an extent we say economic abuse. But this is an act which also criminalizes verbal abuse and most importantly, emotional abuse. So consequence, I say, for example, I say somebody who has been denied employment because of he belonging to a third gender ultimately leads to what? 1, I say economic abuse. 2, I say emotional abuse. A person who is employed but is denied promotion ultimately leads to what? An emotional abuse of the person, of a transgender person. So by using the words physical abuse, sexual abuse, economic abuse, and adding to it verbal and economic emotional abuse, the area of coverage of this penal provision is quite wide. But at the same time, I understand this thing, to my understanding, the legislature has been very conscious of the fact that a criminal, an act which provides for penalty of imprisonment can be misused. So therefore, the limit of imprisonment under the present provision is from 6 months to 2 years and fine, thereby it makes it a bailable offense. So I understand somewhere the legislature being conscious of the fact that this act should not be misused. The penalties have been put forward, unlike as we have in our SC/ST Act, where the offenses are termed as non-bailable. in the present circumstances, the offenses have been the penalty. This leads to a bailable offense. So with this, I conclude my aspects, my understanding of this act, and I am really thankful to Amity University once again for taking up this initiative, because I understand that even if in the present circumstances, the true fact that how a act comes out and solves its purpose, that is achieved. The purpose of an act is only achieved when people understand it. People understand the social aspect, as I stated in the very beginning, that this is a social reformative legislation. Until unless we understand, people are educated, I don't think so. Until unless this happens, we will not be able to achieve the very purpose of this act. So it's a great initiative, I say, from MIT University to take this understanding to people, as so that they are more conscious about the purpose of the act and how we can achieve it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your enlightening words. And very comprehensively, you dealt with all the major provisions of the Act, and most importantly, the principle of adverse discrimination, which is also highlighted in all the important international human rights conventions. And at the last, like you said, the purpose of this legislation or the intended objective of this legislation can be fulfilled or can be achieved only through the medium of awareness. And this is, and in this particular context, our society, MIT Legal Aid and Literacy Society, is doing a bit, and this is our little effort. And again, we are grateful to you, sir, for sparing your valuable time. And now I would like to invite Professor Dr. Ghulam Yazdani Saab, and he's a thorough scholar and has contributed a lot towards society through his teaching and work published in reputed national and international journal. So thank you, Yazdani sir, for sparing your time and be with us to share your words of wisdom, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Please.
Okay. Thank you, dear. Thank you. First of all, I am thankful to Professor Director Aditya Tomar Saab and Professor Shefali Raja. Those are in fact managing the center in Amity Law Schools and joint head in Amity Law School, Noida, who in fact given opportunity and invited me to share my views today in this webinar series, which is being organized by Amity. Is a very good initiative on the very important topic that we will say the Transgender Persons Act and the rules, that is the broad the area that is being covered and deliberated today. In this regard, that the very thanks also to the Amity Legal Aid, particularly within the university, who is having such initiatives, legal aid literacy committees under the school, and also having a very good collaboration with the National Institute of Social Defense, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, having a very socially and legally relevant the issues and deliberations on which are always needed, having such interactions, such deliberations. As I have been asked to speak, the area, I think it is maybe that the organizing committee member will look into the specific. There is the same one, that is the non-discrimination provisions within the Transgender Person Act and rules and regulations based on 2020. That in this reference, though the very speaker before me has covered so many the provisions, which in fact I also thought to speak, but looking into the some of the provisions which will certainly be giving a different and making the different view, which I in fact want to share in this program. Let me first, a trans, in fact, person's gender identity is not the same as the sex on their original birth or at the time of birth, the certificates which are issued to them. In fact, as babies, our sex is recorded as male and female based on the physical characteristics. Okay, there are some people, those are born with chromosomal and other physical certificate differences at the time of birth. They can make this a complex judgment with regard to their identity. They may be referred as, in fact, the intersex. Okay, in this regard, the gender, which is based on the behavior, expectations, and outward presentation, typically considered to correspond someone's sex. In this context, the gender identity is based on the self perception. In fact, the how we see and describe ourselves and how we present to the world. For example, someone whose sex is a female might identify as male and vice versa. People who binary do not consider themselves to have a soul or solely male or female gender identity or take a different approach to the gender. People who experience different, difference between their sex and the gender are referred to in the medical terms as having the gender dysphoria. And someone, in fact, describe that themselves as transgender or trans. If we see that how this the transgender or trans evolution in the very that the community system and their rights, so far that in India, if we look into in the historical perspective, the transgender community in India has had a clear presence throughout the ages, and yet even in the 21st century, they have very few rights. That is a very important point to note it. And this makes that Indian the transgender community one of the most vulnerable in the country. In this regard, such kind of deliberations are needed to always giving much more significance of this aspect. While included within the larger LGBT spectrum in India, the transgender community is doubly marginalized. If we see that factual situations, their very visual and culturally significant presence has always kept them beyond the closed, making them easy targets of the violations and also the biases for centuries that we have observed. Relegated to the ghettos in the most places and without any legal access to jobs, the transgender community is always found to be a poor, having poverty-stricken community. Even now, when the more legislations have been introduced to safeguard their rights, the transgender community most often faces discrimination and the loss of opportunities. The very speaker has though covered the problems which generally they face just before me. It is a fact. You, in fact, the might read heartening news like one, where a transgender couple in the Kerala appeared to appear to the High Court to let them get married under their the trans identities, or the very face that the court rulings across the nation are positively upholding the rights of the transgender persons in impactful cases. But the very fact still remains that those in the transgender community are not always privileged enough to get access to such rights, have the very means, and for that to contest them in the courts of law. That is the fact that I'm referring the very case, that here what we need to know, that is the very important aspect. And the very matters regarding the transgender has reached from the very subordinate courts to the Supreme Court. That shows that the very journey of that the challenges they confront in the society is evident from the cases which are being reported in their matter. The evolution of the transgender rights, if you see that in 2015, the study which published in the Asian Review of the Social Sciences, that explains that transgender have existed and been recognized in India since ancient times. While recognition of the gender outside male or female has also, in fact, that we can say, the only recently been discussed in the very Western societies. In Hindu society, if you see, the people of the non-binary gender expressions have played important role for over 2000 years. Call that the third gender, which is evidence of their existence in the Hindu society, can be found in the very holy scriptures of Hindu faith, in that is like Ramayana and the Mahabharata, where the very hero in that Arjuna becomes the third gender. That reference is very much there. The third gender people have often been revered or cherished, that we see the esteemed throughout that South Asian history. For example, that the Muslim rulers of the Mughal empire in the 15th to 19th centuries, they were very generous patrons of the third gender in the Indians. In that context, the many rose to the very significant position of power under both the Hindu rulers and the Muslim rulers on the issue of such categories of people. In 2014, it was in fact estimated that around 3 million and more the third gender people live in India alone. This is very remarkable to note their presence in our system. The very Manusmriti, which defines the transgender persons in some detail, while the Mahabhaya, Patanjali, in fact, having seminal in that work which refers to transgender as one of the natural gender. Okay. If you see that even in the Vedic astrology, the transgender community is well recognized as the Tritiya, Prakriti, which is associated with the Mercury, the Saturn, and the Ketu. The Puranas mention the three kinds of the supernatural being or the devas associated with the music, associated with the dance, and called like Apsara, the female, and the Gandharva, the male, and the Kinnada, the transgender individuals. Okay. Uh, However, as the very study which I told you, which shows that the transgender community was not criminalized in any way during this and the later period of our history until the British colonial rule, which made or emerged as on this point. This study, which in fact explain how the second half of the 19th century, the British colonial administration exceedingly sought to the very community to criminalize a cultural community of the transgender and the gender non-conforming the individuals called Hijras community in India by the very demarcating them as none are separate, the gender, but a separate caste or a tribe that largely lived in the criminal means. Like the very reference of the legislation, as the speaker before me said, that the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871, that in fact therefore clubbed major transgender communities in India, like Hijras and the Khwajas and the Kothis, as one of the tribe that in fact kidnapped and contested children, the engaged in the very sodomy, which in fact challenged the British sensibility of that masculinity, and dressed like women to dance of the in fact on money in the public places. That reference is found in the very survey. According to that act, the transgender person, caught engaging in any of these acts could be the imprisoned for up to 2 years, fined, or both. In fact, plus all the energies had to be registered under the act so that they could be put under the surveillance and their criminal activities prevented. This was the object of that law at that time. While the law itself was introduced and implemented by the British authorities, on the one hand, one must admit that the very fact that they could not have been properly they executed unless that large section of the Indian society also stigmatized and marginalized the very transgender community. Given how very people in orthodox societies are of those perceived as others, this fact cannot be denied, and the role of the gender, the transgender, the heterosexual, Indians have played in the plight of the transgender community must be recognized. It if we are of the to move forward and claim any other sort of justice for the community in the present day context. After all, that the very effect of the very Criminal Tribes Act of 1871 was far-reaching for the transgender community, especially since it cannot only criminalize them, but also gave authorities the very right to take away any children living in the gender non-conforming communities of the India. The generational, the trauma of this act, and which was implemented the until 1952, when it was finally repealed from the very basis of the discrimination which carried out at that time, that against the transgender community who faced the trauma and the discrimination, even today having a reflection of the past. Those discriminations have not fully taken into considerations and giving them a justice for which they deserve. The very important case which came in that through our Supreme Court, as before me, friend has mentioned, the Nalsa versus Union of India, which came in 2014. How that the very landscape on this aspect shifted from the very issue of the transgender. Even though the very Criminal Tribes Act was repealed in 1952, as I said, there was very little else done on the very constitutional and the legal front in India to ensure that the very generations of the marginalized and community and the discrimination of the transgender who faced by the transgender community was addressed in this particular case of Nalsa versus Union of India. While India had a role to play in the United Nations, who signed not only the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948, but also joined the global efforts to promote equality across the gender and classes. The transgender rights remained a very low on the priority list even after. Many welfare organizations worked over the years to emancipate and empower the transgender community, but largely the very community continued to face discrimination and stigma. This is a hard reality that that we have seen even after that our beautiful constitution came in, and also, as I said, that Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as we always have a great respect for that international document. According to 2020 reports of the non-profit legal news service that the jurist, this landscape shift of 2014, during that year, the Supreme Court made a landmark decision in the National Legal Services Authority called NALSA versus Union of India. That is no doubt is a remarkable judgment that Supreme Court has pondered and made recognition of the transgender and their issues. For the first time, the very Supreme Court announced that the transgender community has the same fundamental rights under the Constitution of India as everyone else, irrespective of the gender identification. Overall, the decision gave the transgender community the some of the very important rights that I will say. The transgender community was legally recognized as the third gender, and the Supreme Court affirmed that not, in fact, recognizing that criminal and the civil cases is clear and legal discrimination.
Rachita,
Discrimination
can you
against
turn off your
them. Those giving, in fact, through gender affirmative therapy are also legally recognized. The identity of individuals undergoing gender, transition must be, based on the, psychological test and not a biological test. The very central and the state governments are directed by the Supreme Court to provide not only a proper medical care to the transgender community, but also to create a separate toilets and other public facilities for them. Further, in fact, the separate HIV surveillance measures must be ensured for the transgender individuals. The very NALSA judgment has further added that the central and the state governments are directed to treat transgender individuals as socially and economically backward classes. This was a very important direction by the Supreme. They must be provided the reservations for educational and jobs and for the social welfare schemes for the transgender community must be introduced, as it is a fact that most of the transgender community, they are poverty stricken community on record. It has been observed, and therefore such direction of the Supreme Court made it special attention to take care on the part of the state and the central government, so that they cannot deprived of the basic facilities or the schemes provided are being provided by the government concerned. The central and the state governments further must create a public awareness program, for which I will say that this university program is one of the objectives of achieving that Ministry of Social Justice has focused on this aspect, that such public awareness program to deal with the stigma associated with them, and the mental health issues like fear, shame, and the gender diaspora, and also the depression and the suicidal tendencies, as before me the speaker has already mentioned that the cases of the transgender are also, reported having such tendencies. Therefore, among the transgender individuals must be taken seriously. Their challenges, that their discrimination, which they are confronting in the society, will be, taken very seriously. As we, as an individual, who can understand, who knows that what is the law of the land, what constitution speaks for, what the Supreme Court has propounded, the issues of the transgender, at least we can also contribute for making awareness with regard to their rights and the protection thereof. The transgender persons, the Protection of Rights Act of 2019. In fact, though on this legislation, very relevant provisions have already discussed by the previous speaker, but the very landmark judgment opened the path towards that more legal empowerment of the transgender community, while also empowering the larger LGBT, Kia, that movement in the country is needed for. However, that the legal framework to operationalize the very changes which are desirable, recommended by that the courts are needed to be taken the proper way to remedy that the very transgender persons. The Protection of Rights Act was in fact drafted the time and again in 2014, 2016, and 2018, but the attempt was failed to pass due to the regressive provisions that could be abused to target the community instead of helping them. And therefore, these regressive provisions, which in fact included the establishment of that screening committee to ascertain if that that applicant qualified as transgender, was like that. Therefore, in 2019, a draft of that act, which was passed in the 2019, was also heavily being critiqued because that the very mandated medical examination was a clear infringement of that person's right to bodily autonomy and right to privacy. Further, the very terms like the transgender and the discrimination were left undefined under the Act, which opening them up for the abuse as well. Though persons having knowledge of law can understand, but the persons in the society for whom that law is passed, in fact needed to they may not be able to properly understand, and the ambiguous interpretation can take place, or giving more than two meaning for such provisions. Therefore, finally, in the 2020, that our Union Ministry of the Social Justice, the empowerment notified the transgender persons the protection of the rights rules in 2020 that came to bridge the very gap between the Supreme Court directions in the 2014 and in 2019 the act, the sum of we can say the clarification of the rules. I can share it because most of the provisions are already discussed. I'm not going to repeat or duplicate them, like that the prohibition against the discrimination and allied rights, if I say, of the transgender persons as per the provisions of the 2019 Act. The very relevant provision, section 3, which in fact talks about the prohibition against discrimination, that no person or establishment shall discriminate against a transgender person on any of that the ground. What are those grounds? Number one, the denial or discrimination of or unfair treatment in the educational establishment and the services thereof. Another point is the unfair treatment in or in relation to the employment or occupation. The very denial of or of the very termination from the employment or occupation. The very denial or the discontinuation of or unfair treatment in health services, etc. Further, if you see the very denial or discontinuation of or unfair treatment with regard to access to our provisions, or the very enjoyment or use of any goods accommodating the accommodation services, means using the hotels or any restaurants, the facilities and the benefits, the privilege or any privilege which is available to a common man also be extended, like all such facilities or privileges or opportunities to the transgender persons as well. In fact, dedicated with regard to those, the use of those general public are the very that the customarily available to the public at large are also to be extended or provided to the transgender. They cannot be denied in that regard, being a transgender. The denial or the discrimination of or unfair the treatment with regard to the right of movement. On that point, this point has been discussed, and the denial or discrimination of the unfair treatment with regard to the right to reside. In fact, that is also. And in the very public places, the market right to purchase or making rent and the use otherwise that any transgender may occupy or in need any property to that effect. The very denial or discrimination of or the unfair treatment in the opportunity to stand for or the hold public or private office, and the very denial of access to or removal from or the unfair treatment in the government or the private establishment in whose care or the custody a transgender person may be. If you see the very provisions of this beautiful act, the another section which talks about section 8, which talks about the obligation of appropriate the government, then what is expected or supposed to be done by the government in their behalf. The appropriate government shall take steps to secure full and effective participation of the transgender persons and their inclusion in the society. Understand, in this, as per section 11, which talks about the grievance redressal mechanism, which says that every establishment shall designate a person to be to be a complaint officer to deal with the complaints relating to the violation of the provisions of that the Transgender Act. Okay. Looking into this similarly, according to the section 13, which talks about the obligation of educational institutions, generally, which we can say, which are the place of imparting education, the legal education, and the awareness with regard to the rights of the transgender, etc. Therefore, the educational institutions and their position in that regard, the transgender persons, which says that every educational institution funded or recognized by the appropriate government shall provide inclusive education and opportunities for sports, for recreation and leisure activities to transgender persons without any discrimination on an equal basis with others. Okay, you cannot make a separate class or sections while allowing them to be associated or part thereof. Therefore, further, if you see the according to section 18 of the Act, which talks about the offenses and penalties that I wanted to share today, so that the very purpose of having the law, those are violating or found to be infringing the provisions of the Act, can understand that the very penalties are also provided. The various offenses have been defined under the Act. Whoever, in fact, compel or the entices a transgender person to indulge in the act of forced or bounded labor, other than any compulsory service for public purpose, cannot imposed by the by government. Okay, the very denies a transgender person the right of passage to a public place or obstruct such persons, understand, from using any or having access to public places to which other members have access to or right to use, or forces or causes a transgender person leave household or village or other place of the residence, such kind of act, and also in fact harm or injures or endangers the life, safety, health, and well-being, whether mental or physical, of a transgender person, or tends to do acts including causing physical abuse or sexual abuse or verbal and emotional abuse, and also the economic abuse, in such situation shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 6 months, but which may extend to 2 years, and with fine. The very provisions of the Act is penalizing such kind of behavior of any person against and about the transgender. And some other features of the Act, if I say that the discrimination was in fact defined as any distinction exclusion or the restrictions on the basis of the gender identity are expressions which has the purpose or the effects of impairing or nullifying the recognition or enjoyment or exercise or equal basis with other of all human rights and fundamental freedoms in political, economic, social, cultural, civil, and other fields, and also includes all a form of discrimination, including the denial of reasonable accommodation. This definition was in fact removed from the final rules that were notified. Okay, the very that the mandatory medical examination requirement has been removed. Those who have in fact already registered themselves as transgender, identifying individuals before the enactment of the 2019 Act do not have to submit any record for further identification. New applicants are those seeking a revised certificate of identity based on any of the gender affirming medical interventions must submit a certificate issued by the medical superintendent or the chief medical officers of the medical institutions of their district district magistrate based on the certificate provided by the district magistrate. Other identity proofs must be changed within the 15 days as per the provisions of the Act. The very definition of medical intervention has been broadened well beyond just surgery. That Rule 2, which defines medical intervention as any gender affirming medical intervention undertaken by the individuals to facilitate their transition to their self identified gender, including but not limited to counseling, hormonal therapy, or surgical intervention. The rules which make the provision to start welfare boards to ensure non-discrimination in public life, including the formation of the transgender protection cell and the drafting of that equal opportunity policy. However, the rules don't mention any affirmative action like reservation or the concessions. On in fact October 2020, the report of that the Center for Law and Policy Research, Bangalore, however, points out that the proper implementation of those 2020 rules and 2019 Act depends largely on the district magistrate, who need to be trained and sensitized to be able to aid transgender individuals better. That spirit be kept in mind. Further, the gaps between the Act and the rules will inevitably create confusion, making the availability of the identity cards, which are the foundation based upon which every citizen can claim their rights, more difficult for the transgender community. This is the reason why that neither the 2019 Act nor the 2020 rules are being celebrated as great victories for the transgender community. This has to be kept in mind. Now, making more important aspect on this, I want to discuss that the challenges to Transgender Persons Act, the very that Swati Bidhan Barua versus Union of India, a case which is still pending. I think date has come, which the Supreme Court has in fact deciding. The judgment is not yet out, but whether the Transgender Persons and Protection of Rights Act 2019 violates the fundamental rights guaranteed under the Article 14, Article 15, 16, and Article 19 and 21 of the Constitution was having this, Supreme Court going to, I think, in this week itself, was expected to be giving judgment. That copy is not yet out, but issues which were related are mentioned in this petition of very pertinent aspect with regard to the transgender persons, whether the 2019 Act should recognize transgender persons as a socially and educationally backward class and grant reservations in the public employment and education under the Article 15 class 4 and Article 16 class 4 of the very Constitution, in fact, which were directed in the NELSA. Okay, whether the Section 18D is arbitrarily sets the maximum penalty for the sexual abuse against transgender persons as less than what it is sexual abuse against women under Section 376 of the Indian Penal Code. Whether this violates the fundamental rights of equality under Article 14 is another important issue was in this case. Whether the Section 18 Clause A vague and arbitrary and thereby violation of Article 14 was another point in the very case. Whether Section 12, which restricts the very decisional autonomy of that adult transgender persons and threatens the alternative family structures of the transgender community. Whether Section 7 of that 2019 Act violates the right to self-identities one's gender, making a transgender identity contingent medical surgery is Section 7 in the contradiction with NALSA and thereby violates that Article 19 Clause A and Article 21 of the Constitution. Whether the Section 4, 5, and 6 of the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019 constrict the right to self-identities, one gender, and thereby violates the fundamental rights following from Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A, and Article 21 of the Constitution. In this case, the very petitioners seek for the court to strike down section 4, 5, 6, 7, section 12, subclass 3, and section 18 class A and section 18 class D of the Act as unconstitutional. In addition, they pray for the court to issue writ of mandamus that directs the
Sir, can you hear me?
second week was the date which the Supreme Court was going to decide the very judgment, though it is not out. But having concern to the issues of the transgender, I will say that the very important issues are involved therein. So far, the law and the rules which are in place with regard to the protection of the transgender persons, certainly we as an individual, we the people of India must look into the spirit of the Constitution, which protects their identity. They are also a citizen of this country, having recognized as the third gender. They all are, deserve to be protected in accordance with the principles of the law by the central and the state government. Most importantly, all such initiative like this program or any program which with the times to come must comply with and confirm the very spirit of the law that our constitution, and also give them equal rights and recognition, and which is one of the very clear, because this is not something that charity is required. They deserve, because the law of the land give rights and recognize those things. We have to respect and obey the law, and so that their needs and challenges be achieved. I think I'm going to conclude now, because some of the issues that I wanted to share, some different one, but I have just also summarized my concern looking to the previous speakers, not to repeat many of the provisions, but I have just put in a certain domain. With this, I would like to thanks again to the Amity University and the organizing team for giving opportunity to share. Though, in fact, I was busy with some other program, and in the short notice, that information came from the Professor Aditya Tomar and his team. Then, yes, I always, look him that always doing very good initiative, making the university much more, visible, and in academia we get a very, very high position. My always good wishes to all the participants, and also the very organizing team and the university system and administration. Thank you so much. If anyone wants any sort of question, now the forum is open to Madam, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Yazdani. Well, everybody, let's have a round of applause for sir. So beautiful address, sir, and you have a thorough and in-depth knowledge about the Act, and especially when you talk about Section 8, Section 12, and 13. We get so much enlightened, and also the fact that, yes, the trans people have been discriminated is one big thing. So we will take up question and answer session within a short while. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, एक बहुत बड़ी त्रासदी है, एक दो रास्ते पे खड़ी हूँ. दो रास्ते पे खड़ा हूँ। पहले बिछड़ा था, अब एक अभिशाप हूँ। अमेरी और खुशियों से सबके घर में मेहमान हूँ। औरत के शरीर में पुंसत्व के साथ हूँ, फिर भी इंसान के श्रेणी से मैं बाहर हूँ। तिरस्कृत ही इंसान पे अपमान हूँ। मैं किन्नर हिजड़े के नाम से विश्व में बदनाम हूँ, और अब उसी कोख में निकला पाप हूँ जो आज भी चार दीवारी के बेहाल हूँ। शायद लीगल एड और लिटरेसी कमेटी का ये ट्रांसजेंडर और डिसेबिलिटी राइट्स का सेल कुछ त्रासदी को कम कर सके, किसी के आंसू पोंछ सके। आप सबके आशीर्वाद से और आप सबके विश्वास से हमें उम्मीद है कि हमारा सेल बहुत अच्छा काम करेगा, और हमें थोड़ा सा और प्रोत्साहन देने के लिए हमारे गौतम बुद्ध नगर के डिस्ट्रिक्ट लीगल सर्विसेज अथॉरिटी के माननीय जज व सेक्रेटरी श्री राजीव कुमार वत्स जी हमारे समक्ष हैं। अनुरोध करूंगी श्री राजीव वत्स जी के हम लोगों को मोटिवेट करें। ओवर टू यू रेस्पेक्टेड।
नमस्कार मैम, नमस्कार।
यस
थैंक यू मैडम। वैसे तो आपने अपनी जो लास्ट की लाइनें हैं उनमें सब कुछ कह दिया है इस सब्जेक्ट के बारे में, लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि आप जो इस तरह का वेबिनार आयोजित कर रहे हैं बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है। तो सबसे पहले मैं आप सभी को नमस्कार करता हूँ। एज यू नो, वी लिव इन अ डेमोक्रेटिक स्टेट. All the people have fundamental rights and legal rights. But transgender section of the society has been neglected socially, economically, and in terms of other rights, as discussed by Professor Ghulam sir. As per the 2011 census report, 4.8 million Indians identified as transgender, but there was no legal protection to protect transgenders. Honorable Supreme Court in National Legal Service Authority versus Union of India 2014 recognized them as third gender. In this landmark judgment, Honorable Justice K.S. Radhakrishnan observed that recognition of transgenders as third gender is not a social or medical issue, but a human rights issue. Thereafter, to protect the transgender section of the society, Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019 was enacted. The act prohibits discrimination of transgenders in relation to opportunities for education, job, health, care services, and access to services, etc. It criminalizes begging, forced bonded labor, denial of use of public places, denial of residence in the household, villages, etc. Physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, and economical abuse. There is a need of awareness about the act and the acceptance of transgender related issues. I think in this regard, your role is very important. The webinar organized by you will certainly be helpful towards the awareness about the Transgender Act and related issues. Thank you. Best wishes for your webinar. Thank you
so much, sir. Thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule. I know you were very busy throughout the day and you made it for us. Thank you so much. We are so humbled and honored.
Thank you. Thank you, all the participants.
Thank you so much, sir. And I know that DLSA always supports us and helps us in all our endeavors. So together, Amity Legal Aid and Literacy Committee with DLSA Gautam Buddha Nagar is going to bring a change in the society, which Mahatma Gandhi talked about. Well, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to wind up the webinar, but then we will take up 2 quick questions. So Yazdani sir, there is a question in the chat box. Can you answer that? Amandeep sir.
You please read up, Sumitra.
Yes, sir. Just one moment. Yes, sir. Give me 1 minute, sir. Nitin, sir, can you see the question? Yeah. Well, yeah, Aryam has got a question, sir. Aryam says that, sir, many people objected to the legislation drawing no difference between intersex people and transgender people. The process of identifying as a transgender was criticized as being invasive and stealing autonomy of people over their gender as opposed to the biological sex. What is the state of the current discourse regarding this? Over to you, Yazdani sir.
Yes, a very expected question, because the very deliberation on the topic is always having interest, conflict of interest. We are not willing to and always happy to give recognition to the other sex. In fact, this Transgender, as I told, that they have faced the discrimination with the ages, and still, despite of this law and the intervention of the Supreme Court and the new law came in, which also faced lot of debate on the Parliament before making and finalizing the various provisions to that effect, because that shows that in the social mindset and the psychological aspect of a human being in the human nature is always having various questions that needed to be introspected with the time, that we see this that the transformation in the society, the things which are being changed with the time will certainly will get into all these issues as the question has been asked. We need to recognize this thing, that they are also needed to be protected and giving recognition to that effect as others. Because that our perception, our that eyes and our domain, yes, it is not being affected. Why that we are not willing to and accept the reality that they also need the protection, and the law is now in place, and you are the makers, and the changes in the law you can make it, but certainly look into, they are also human being, and well, they are protected by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Your rights and their rights are not any different one. Look into that the weaker sex, the very vulnerable groups, the marginalized societies. Do you think about what kind of psychological trauma they face? We cannot, if we are in the mainstream of the social development, they are deprived sections. Therefore, such questions be kept in many dimensions. It is obviously, but I think we need to relook our concern and the very protection they needed to be given.
Yes, very well answered, sir. And also, as
Yeah.
Amandeep ji had also previously said, that Section 3 is also the soul of the act. So I think certain
Yeah.
derivatives can be taken up from there. Well, everybody, sir, just now when I floated that, we need
Ma'am, with your
many,
permission,
many
and with the
questions.
permission of Yazdani
Yeah,
sir, if I could
please.
add to the question. So Yazdani sir has almost covered this aspect, the question which was put. I would just like to add on to this, see if the issue which is-
Dear Aman, you have already discussed too many things which I was expecting, but beautifully,
I'm sorry, sir.
the deliberations have, I think, been quite good, and I think the participants must have enjoyed on this.
Thank you so
Though
much.
this legislation and the spirit of that law, we must feel happy that at least this law has come in place. Otherwise, before that, the Nalsa case and no other law was in fact in place, and was it ultimately, if I say that efficacy of the law will work only when that our mindset will recognize and accept the ground realities. That is the most important thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to answer the question which Aryam has put forward. This covers two aspects. One is the difference between the intersex people and transgender. This act covers in a single definition both of them. And the second issue which is being raised is the identification process. So I must say two things. One, definitely, as you have already said, that this is just a beginning. With the time as the society matures, we find that there are more social reforms. We have a reformed society. Specifically, certain things are going to change. Law is always dynamic. As far as the issue of categorizing both intersex people and transgender people in one definition, I just want to say, see, the legislature has been very conscious. I understand there may be certain different circumstances of intersex people and transgender people, but what the legislature has tried to do has to draw out an inclusive definition. So the coverage protection is being provided to everyone without any discrimination in between the classes. So
Yes.
this is the intent. And somewhere I understand, see, as of now, if somebody has to declare, he has to obtain a transgender identity, it is voluntary. It is not that somebody is forced to do that. It is not a compulsion. So people who voluntarily want to obtain the third gender identity has to come forward. They have to make an application on affidavit as the procedure has stated. So somewhere I say that even if the two remains in the same definition, it won't be discriminative. It won't affect that wrongly, but somewhere the legislature has given a very wide open definition so that everyone who wants to avail the benefits under this should come forward. Secondly, as far as the process of identification is concerned, I always say, see, these are rules. The rules can be modified over a period of time. Though
Yes.
the law may remain same, you can amend the rules. So that is why there is a reason why you take out a provision for formulating rules. You put forward an authority to the government because it is easier for modifying the rules and to amend the rules than the legislature. So this is one aspect. As far as another aspect, I say, see, one good thing which we must appreciate about this act is it is not only about the biological condition. This the identification processes involves the psychological condition. So this is only in the circumstances where somebody has gone for a sex reassignment surgeries, only then you require a certificate from the medical practitioners, from the CMO, medical superintendent. Otherwise, it's more a psychological process. So
yeah, thank you, Aman sir. Thank you, Aman sir. Actually, we are getting so many questions now. So what I will do, I'll give my email address here in the chat box, and everybody who's joined us, and if you have questions for the eminent speakers, you please email it to me. I will email it to sir, and sir will revert it to you from your to your email address. So thank you everybody for joining us. And before we bid adieu to this platform of webinar on Transgenders Act 2019 and the accompanying rules 2020, I'll quickly request additional director and joint head, Professor Dr. Arvind Bhanu sir, additional director and joint head, Professor Dr. Shefali Raizada ma'am, to present the vote of thanks. Over to you, respected sir and ma'am. Arvind Bhanu sir, can you hear me? Yes.
Oh, thank you, Sumitra. Thank you so much. So very wonderful seminar, webinar, which is being organized by you, the ALSN specifically. Now, we at the MET are grateful to all the speakers and participants who have given their consent for sparing their time out of their busy schedule to deliver their valuable thoughts in this webinar to be organized or being organized by MET Legal Aid and Literacy Committee in collaboration with National Institute of Social Defense, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. I'm sure through these deliberations, the basic purpose of webinar to spread awareness of rights of transgender will be served. I'm very much sure. As we know, all who are discussing here and outside and those who are connected with this issue, the issue of trans community in relation to their rights, which has been declared and validated by the courts of law and also recognized and enacted in the law by the parliament. But we all know that law in book, law in practice, and legal awareness in the society serves different purposes. And this webinar will serve that purpose which law in book cannot serve and law in practice cannot serve. There's a long discussion which has been taken place here. I would like to thank to Dr. R. Giriraj, Director Sahab, National Institute of Social Defense, for his long deliberations on Transgender Persons Act 2019. He had discussed a lot about the very manifestations and aspects of this law, the challenges enshrined in this law in implementation. Now, what basic question is again remaining, that though the law and the court of law have addressed the discrimination which was being taken place against the transgender community, but now the question is that the discrimination which is perceived in the social perception, how would we be able to erase this? In that context, Advocate Raman Sharma ji, Advocate General, Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh High Court, who cited Nalsa case and who had also gone to the background of the issue, which was the source of the declaration of the road rights by the Supreme Court. We are thankful to him for so wonderful presentation and deliberation on the issue. Now, next, Mr. Rajada Sorobali ji, though he had said that I am not from law background, but wonderfully, he had gone in I had heard him very much carefully, but I had seen that he had gone beyond even the boundary of or discussing the legal issues in relation to the transgender community. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. Now, one more speaker, former additional DG Health Service, Government of India, Professor Dr. A.K. Godpale, School of Medicine and Research, Sarda University, who had deliberated a lot on different aspects of the transgender community, the issues connected to them, the social, the difficulty in assimilation, in adoption. He had gone, in deep. Thank you so much, sir. Now, our sir, Yazdani sir, Professor Ghulam Yazdani sir, I have listened very carefully. He has discussed all the aspects, starting from the case, the law, the rules. Now, again, the question which he has also touched very deeply, very wonderful presentation, which I heard carefully. That again, though the self-assessment right has been given to them, but now the question again comes that self-assessment right will certainly encounter with the discrimination engraved in the perception of the society. Law has given them right. Case have given them fundamental right. In terms of the fundamental right, we are the same. But again, the question comes, because the awareness is needed as we are just engaging such kind of the webinar and other programs. The government is also involved. But sir, I think the question, the issue, which is a very, very difficult issue, is that the discrimination in eyes of law is certainly abolished. But the discrimination which is perceived and caught by the perception of the society, how can we erase this? This is the big question. Sir, you have touched very wonderfully, along with our advocate Amandeep ji, who has also gone through this aspect in relation to the rules 2020, in light of 2019 Act. So much wonderfully the presentation have been done by Advocate Aman and by Professor Yazdani ji. We are thankful to you, sir. We are so much thankful to you. Now,
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I cannot forget to extend my sincere thanks to our Jessa, Secretary District Legal Service Authority, Rajiv Kumar Bassi, who is always with us. He always gives the motivation. This is a judicial motivation, rather I should say. This is a judicial motivation. We all are very much impressed by him. We are thankful to him. He has stressed in his deliberation the need on awareness. It's a truth that without making awareness of their rights and put them in the mind of the society, we are to change the perception of the society. Then the discriminatory attitude could be, perhaps possibly, can change. Otherwise, there is no possibility. Yazdani sir had validly said that they have all the fundamental rights. All the fundamental rights under Article 19, 21, 16, every right is there with them. But again, I am saying that the implementation is needed. So we are thankful to Rajiv Kumar Bassi. Now, I cannot forget and I cannot, miss the chance to give our great gratitude, which is due towards our Honorable Founder President and Honorable Chancellor, sir, who always wish to see us growing. In fact, because of their philanthropic vision, we are here. We are really grateful to them for shaping this MAT organization into a mighty organization. Now, I would also like to extend our thanks to BC ma'am, though she is now in USA, but her blessings are with us. Chairman Saab, who is with us, whenever we need, we call a day and night to him. And every time he is ready to provide us advice. Not only advice, but whenever we present the problems, he always seems to be a problem solver. So therefore, we are here and we extend our sincere thanks to Chairman sir. Now, it would be a mistake on my part if I forget to extend my thanks to our all administrative officers, IT people, support, and staff members at MAT who always extend their support. Last but not least, I extend my heartfelt thanks to my colleagues and all those who are directly and indirectly involved in organizing this program. Now we cannot forget and we cannot miss this chance to give the thanks to Dr. Sumitra. क्योंकि सुमित्रा का जो स्पीच भी होता है, मैं तो देखता हूँ, she is a wonderful presentation. At the same time, she is a wonderful commentator and wonderful anchor also. She gives a very, delightful sense to everyone who is, whether this is an offline meeting or online meeting. So thank you very much, Mitra ji. आप इसी तरह से हमारे साथ बने रहो और हम आपके साथ बने रहें और certainly हम ट्रांसजेंडर की जो डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी पोजीशन है उसको घटाव करने में गवर्नमेंट का भी साथ देंगे, एनजीओ का भी साथ देंगे और एनएसडी का भी साथ देंगे. Thank you very much. Thank you to all. Thank you to students and those who are here. I extend my sincere thanks to them. So thanks to one and all once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arvind Bhanu sir. आपका प्यार विश्वास ऐसे ही बना रहे सर. एमिटी लीगल एड एंड लिटरेसी कम्युनिटी को नई ऊंचाइयों पर ले जाने के लिए आपका विश्वास और साथ चाहिए. बना रहे ऐसा ही विश्वास रखती हूँ अपने आप पर भी. Thank you so much, Arvind Bhanu sir. Finally, before we end the webinar, I'll request our dear, respected and honorable Joint HOI and Additional Director, Professor Dr. Shefali Raizada ma'am, to speak a few words to our audience. Shefali Raizada ma'am.
I was not announcing my name, but I tried to be the part of this. I was listening to a little busy, in other words, but certainly this platform, I found few days ago on 20th February, we celebrated the Social Justice Day. So I believe that day also we were talking about the economic equality, but talking about the other equalities too. But today I'm very happy that all the dignitaries are here, and they have given their inputs for the social justice for this exclusive segment of a very, very important social strata, and that is the need of the hour to think over. So thank you so very much, and thank you everyone. All the dignitaries, they have given a very good inputs and bright inputs. They have expressed their expertise in the area, and they have given, and certainly it will open the new gates for the social justice ambit. So thank you so very much, and thank you everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, respected Joint HUI ma'am. Well, everybody, it's time to bid adieu to this portal, but I would again cite and quote Justice Deepak Mishra sir, who while giving the verdict for section 377 said, and I reiterate again, he said that the identity is pivotal to one's being, and identity is equivalent to divinity. Destruction of the individual identity would tantamount to crushing of the intrinsic dignity, and that cumulatively encapsulates the values of privacy, choice, freedom of speech, and other expressions. Having said so, I now take it off from this platform saying just one thing: I am what I am. So take me as I am. Well, everybody, thank you for joining first webinar in the series of webinar series on Transgenders Act 2019 and the Rules 2020. See you all next time on the next webinar, and we will shortly float the information about the next webinar. Having said so, we will now bid adieu to this platform, and in the words of Honorable Founder President Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, goodbye and God bless. Thank you everyone for joining us. Mobin sir, we can now
Thank you,
close
sir.
out.
Thank you very much.
Bye everybody, take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aman Saab. Thank you so much.